What's up, everybody? So this next episode, James and I talk about life after fighting. A lot of the stuff about how I made the transition from fighting to life after fighting. Check it out.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Yamatodamashii podcast. Enson, how's it going today? I saw on Instagram that you were in, was it Korakuen Hall?
Yeah, Korakuen Hall. There was a Japan Kickboxing event that's run by my kickboxing teacher, Watanabe Sensei. So I went to check it out. We always love going to those fights because it's total like scraps, it's like martial arts. There's no ring girls. There up until the main event. There's no ring songs.
Mm-hmm.
They play one song and they both got to get it at the same time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's like straight up. Yeah, we're here to fight. So
yeah.
And the guys are there too. It's really different from K1 where, because they allow elbows. They allow clinching with knees. K1 has changed their rules where they don't allow elbows. They don't. If you clinch, you can't clinch with two hands. You gotta have an open. You cannot clinch the neck to knee. So they took away the necktie. So it's really sporty now. K1. No, granted, it is real interesting. Those are exciting, but man, the events at the Japan Kickboxing, the Nihon Kickboxing, even with the clinch rules, it's super exciting. So the K1 probably saying that they took out the rules because it was for excitement. Honestly, I know why K1 took out the rules. They took out the rules because the Thai guys were beating everybody.
Really?
So they took out the tools that the Thai guys are really good at, which is elbows and neckties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
I mean that changes the dynamic quite a bit, right? So
yeah, it does, man. And so we love watching these fights because it's straight up just for fights. It's just like let's have guys come here and scrap, So it's really cool. So we really enjoy the Watanabe Gym Japan kickboxing fights.
Could be a big year for kickboxing, to be fair. Because there's been so much talk for ages now about the whole Tenshin versus Takaru fight. I can never say his name. Takeru, that's it. Yeah. So it's kind of, I don't know. Seems kickboxing is making quite a big comeback.
That's going to be a huge fight in Japan if they can decide what venue they have it in.
Yeah. A lot of politics, I'm guessing, involved in that one.
Yeah, huge politics. Yeah, huge. Yeah.
Interesting. Cool. Well, today we were just gonna talk a bit about sort of life after your fight career, just because I think for fans like myself, where it's hard for us to kind of fathom what it's like to, one day be fighting in an arena, 40,000 people cheering you on, and then Sunday, the lights are out and you move on with your life. And I've always kind of been curious to know quite a bit about that, just in terms of how you felt about making that transition.
Well, for me, like we've talked about before, it was never a sport. It was about the martial art, about testing myself in the most extreme situations. That's why I chose the fighters that I thought would break me. Mm-hmm. So, for me, every fight was stressful. I mean, if you can even try and think for a moment of the place that you accepted in your heart that you were probably going to die. Like if there's a park near your house and you knew you accepted that there's a good chance that you're going to die in that park, you'd probably avoid that park like the plague. But see that I'm accepting that I'm probably going to die in the ring tonight, but I'm going into that ring on my own power. I mean, if you really think about it, to a point where I'm writing last letters to people that I care about, when you really think about it, there's so much stress involved. So for me, I enjoyed the fighting because I felt there was something that was good, and I felt it was a way to be able to test myself in extreme life and death situations to build my strength in my heart and my spirit. But honestly, after every fight, there was never like, oh, that was fun. I never felt that way. It was more like, holy shit, I made it through this. I can't wait to go home and rip up all the letters. So for me, that's I think that's a big thing. Um, the whenever I went in the ring, it didn't matter what ring it was. It didn't matter if there was one person watching or there was 80,000 people watching. I see a lot of fighters in the UFC today. Um, didn't like fighting without no crowd. It's like, the opponent's going to still be there. The ring's the same size. The referee's going to be there. You can get knocked out with the same punch. The crowd outside in the have nothing to do with it. The crowd has absolutely nothing to do with it. It's, if it's you focus on the mission at hand is taking down your opponent or beating up your opponent. The fans don't even come into play. So, for me, a ring was a square, area, square arena that I was going hand to hand combat with another man that wants to hurt me. And regardless if it was one person involved watching or a whole, television crew, it didn't matter. So for me, I think because of all that, I don't miss the, that fighting in front of that many people screaming and cheering, because it never really was a thing for me. I didn't really pay attention to any of that. And, as far as, these fighters missing the limelight, missing the autographs, I still get it. I get it at a very good level. It's not to a point where it really screws up my day because I'm getting stopped by people. But it's not like everyone ignores me. So I still get stopped every so often. Sometimes I go to arena without being stopped at all. Like tonight, I don't think we got stopped tonight. So it's just nice like that. I mean, of course, there are probably people watching me and whispering to themselves that, oh, that's Enson, that kind of stuff. But so I still here and there get that attention. So I really don't think, even if I didn't, I don't think I would crave it. I think for me, I'm lucky because my whole stance within the career wasn't about the fame and money. It was more about testing myself. And after the Igor Vovchanchyn fight, I felt I did through the ultimate test. So I felt everything was accomplished. So, what the funny thing is, after I retired, there was a span where I didn't train for like a couple of years. Not at all. I didn't miss the gym. I didn't miss the exercise. I didn't miss the training. Got a little fat. I didn't miss it. People ask me, hey, you don't miss that. And I answer them by saying, I think in my career, I trained so hard and I sacrificed so much for the sport. I was burnt out. I was literally burnt out. I didn't want to teach it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to, the most I did was I turned into a fan and I started watching it. And it changed. I just enjoyed it as a fan, So I think that's a big thing about, my after fight life is the approach that I had during the fight and the reasons why I fought and the feelings I had when I fought. So that's a big difference, with that's these fighters nowadays that keep making comebacks.
Yeah, because because obviously you're in that sort of pioneer class of like really the first group of people to do it, but the rewards obviously weren't what they are now for doing it, but you had such a different motivation coming into the game that was never even part of it. And
there are so many pros and cons to it. Financially, I didn't get as much, but because they didn't stop the fights as fast as they do today, I could show my heart. I could build my heart. They didn't have as much, sponsorships and anything, but because there weren't so much sponsorships, they allowed the NHP rules, where you could stomp the head, you could soccer ball kick. And I believe for me, if I'm going in the ring to test my anxiety and my strength in my heart, if there's rules that you can't stomp on the head and you can't soccer ball kick, you can't do that kind of stuff, then there's so much less anxiety when you're in the ring. But when the guy can do everything to you, when you fall on the ground, he'll step on your head or he might soccer ball you a kick while you're getting up. There's so much more anxiety. So as far as the test in my heart of fear, controlling fear, fighting fear and anxiety, I think I was lucky with those rules. So, you know, as much as you can say, damn it, you probably would have got the fight of the night almost every fight, which is plus 50 grand. The amount you got paid, you probably would have got paid a lot more in today. But, you know, financially, fame wise, you know, you got, I mean, I couldn't believe it. You know, Michael Douglas or, you know, is watching the fights. You know, you have Mike Tyson watching the fights. You know, I can't imagine, you know, Denzel Washington in the crowd. You know, of course, you know, that fame, you don't have that, but I think overall, I'm happier that I fought in the day that I fought than fighting now, because I think I was, it was so, everything was so minimal that I was able to focus on the honor and the, you know, fighting for building my heart, and none of the material things got in the way. You know, today there's so much things that will interfere with the process of the martial artist. You know, the money, the fame, the sponsorship, all that kind of stuff is something that human nature, like, you know, I want to fight for money now. You know, say, oh, you're gonna make $500,000. You can buy a house after the fight. You know, there's so much flash that interferes with the martial artist, the idea of the martial artist. Yeah.
No, it's interesting. It's so true. You guys had like almost like a blank canvas in the beginning, right? And then slowly over time, there's been more things sort of put on that canvas, and just kind of changes the art, I guess. So
Yeah, it does. It does.
So before our technical difficulties, we were talking a bit about, you know, how your sort of mindset was during your career. But what I'm curious is there much of a difference in when you applied that mentality to your fighting career? Do you apply a similar mentality in your coaching career?
That's a hard one because there, as you know, probably, there's the mentality that I had in the ring is not one that you're going to find often in fighters. So I can't really train them like I'm training myself. So yeah, it's a real fine line on how far I can go, how far I can push them. How do I make them, you know, when they want to rest, do I make them train more? You know, it's a real fine line because, you know, it's there's I don't know if I, you know, a fighter like me is not going to be coming in a handful. Yeah. Like, you know, like, you know, for instance, Tsuyoshi, it was like after what happened in his last fight, you know, we're thinking, okay, wait a minute, now we got to sit back and relook at this whole thing, because, you know, he's definitely not the fighter that I was. I mean, he might be a better fighter, but as far as
different mentality,
the fighter that's willing to fight to the death, you know, that's kill or be killed kind of thing, it's definitely not the case. So, you know, I had to really step back and see how I relooked the training and how I push him. And, you know, it's kind of difficult to actually, you know, apply how I train myself to training other people.
Yeah, I can see that being quite a big challenge, just because your view on it was so unique, especially in this day where you just don't really see it that often. So
yeah, especially today.
So I've always wanted to know, because obviously in your fight career, you seem very sort of goal orientated, where it was kind of, I want to give it my all. I want to fight the absolute best guys. I want to challenge myself. You kind of like had those challenges in your head. You knew the opponents you wanted to fight because that you felt they were like the strongest opponents for you. How did you transfer that approach to sort of what you do now in life? Are you quite still goal orientated?
Yeah, I think so. It's one of those things like, for example, when we did the walk across Japan, you know, there's this real steep hill, Hakone. It's called Hakone, and it's you pretty much going right over a steep mountain. And there's two paths. There's one path, the more wide, roundabout way, and then there's one right over the mountain. And so we got to Odawara, which is the town right before Hakone, and we got there, and Lumina Sato put us up for the night, took us to dinner. And when we were at dinner, I was a navigator for the whole trip, all the way from Sapporo all the way to Kitakyushu. So I was a navigator. So every night before I went to sleep, I would navigate the next day. So as I'm eating dinner, I'm figuring out, looking on Google Maps and looking at, places to sleep and how far we can walk within the day. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, okay, that Hakone Mountain is huge. It's super steep. So I'm like, okay, let's see what happened. I was, at that point, we went through so many mountains that I was so sick of hills.
Mhm.
So I was thinking, okay, we're going to avoid that hill. I looked at the path to go around Hakone was going to take us probably another half a day. So I was like, oh my God, it's going to take us another 6-7 hours to walk around. And I was saying, but I really don't want to, I didn't even want to look at a little slanted hill. I didn't even want to walk up a slanted hill. So, okay, we'll go around. So when we decided to go, I'm thinking, I'm still planning it out. And as we go to dinner, these guys are asking me about how you're going to continue on. And I kind of told them that, yeah, I'm thinking of going around this. And I showed them the route on the map, like going around the mountain. And they go, yeah, you should, man. It's impossible to go up Hakone because especially with the carts you have. We're pushing carts with sleeping bags and stuff on it.
Mhm.
So they said, that'd be impossible. And then when I first heard that, I was like, ooh, impossible. I was like, oh, maybe I'm doing the right thing. And then they kept going off on like, yeah, that's a good idea because there's no way you guys would make it up. And I'm thinking, wait. There's no way you can say no way. It's like, and I don't know, for something about it, I just had this little thing that came into my head, like, watching Mark Kerr pummel Hugo Duarte. When I saw that, and I'm like, oh, this is the only guy that challenged Hickson on the beach and almost beat Hickson.
Mhm.
I'm like, holy shit, Mark Kerr just made him run on the ring 3 times and got him disqualified. I'm thinking, oh,
Yeah.
for some reason, I had this little feeling like, I want to feel that. I want to get in that ring.
Mhm.
And then as these guys were telling me that it was impossible to climb Hakone with our carts, I don't know, that same thing that I had in the fight just sparked up. And I was like, oh, we'll see. We'll see. And then I just sat there and I thought, okay, wait. I got Mike Fowler and I got Roman De La Cruz walking with me. So I looked at Roman, I looked at Mike, and I said, hey, I'm thinking of going straight over the mountain. I said, what do you guys think? It was, well, bro, whatever you do, we're doing. So I'm like, okay, let's do it. So we went and attacked that mountain. Lo and behold, a typhoon hit that night.
Fuck.
So we were walking up, not only walking up Hakone with our cars in that steep mountain, we're walking in the middle of a typhoon. So we were drenched, wet, and everything, So, like you asked me that it carries on, my fight mentality carries on in my life. I think in a way it actually does.
Mhm. It seems
That's
like
a
it.
perfect example. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like when you still see a challenge big enough, you want to kind of attack it. So,
Yeah. Even when I did the pilgrimage, it was something
mhm.
that, to think of walking 880 miles through mountains and to 108 different temples.
Mhm.
I was like, oh shit, that sounds crazy.
Mhm.
And then what happens is when after I hear that, oh, tons of, like, there's a bunch of people that walk a year. They walk there's many hundreds of people have already walked the pilgrim. I'm like, okay. All of a sudden they lost its spark for me. It was like, oh, everyone does it, then I'm not that interested.
Mhm.
And then I had this wild idea of making these rules about, not spending any money for food and housing. Yeah.
Okay.
So I know the Japan that I went in August, which is midsummer for Japan, and Japan has really hot summers.
Mm.
So I just why I didn't want to be stupid. So what I did was I allowed myself to only buy water, and that's all I bought. Other than that, every food was whatever I could carry in my backpack, I could eat. If it ran out, I had to hope that people offer me food, because in Shikoku, when you do the pilgrimage, people give offerings to the pilgrims. So they might give a little money for housing. They might give you food. They might actually put you up in their house. So I decided that I'm gonna, because it was actually possible, it didn't intrigue me as much. Like, okay, so many people did it already. It's like, oh. Then I thought, okay, wait, how many people did it without paying for one night of housing?
Mm.
How many people did it without paying for any food? And that's when I got interesting again. So I don't know. It's just like my fight career. Things that seemed impossible just seemed to drag me to it.
Mm. And it seems like you're super diverse with what you do, right? So you kind of you're busy training. Of course, you've got all the martial arts, the training, everything's still going on there. You're writing a second book. You've already written one. You're writing, the other one's nearly done. You'll be doing this podcast. It just seems like you've always sort of had a lot of different things going on. Do you think that's why you've always sort of been really content as well as part of your sort of fighting career? Because once that ended, it was kind of like nothing stopped for you. You just move on to the next things.
Yeah, I think that really helped because I have a lot of things that opportunities in life that I can do. But I think the biggest thing is that I never became financially dependent because we didn't get financially secured during fighting. I never got um, entertained by the fame. So I think that's a big thing. For me, there are a lot of guys trying to get back into the fighting game because they're so used to that lifestyle that they created for themselves by making a lot of money and fighting, and all of a sudden the income stops, and they're thinking, okay, if I train and fight again, I can boom make this much money again. That's intriguing. And back in the day and age today, you get a lot of fame, and fame feels really good when people just scream your name and everything. So I think I didn't get much of that. I didn't get much money. So I think that's a big thing that really didn't it didn't like get into my I didn't get too used to that kind of stuff. I didn't feel it. I didn't get that what do you say, like some kind of contagious sickness that you fame and money.
Yeah,
I call fame and money two sicknesses when
yeah.
it starts taking over you. So I think that's a big part, not just the fact that I had a lot of things going. I think I never did get used to being rich. I was never rich. I never was super famous where I would miss the fame. So I think that really helped me that I didn't get all of that. And I think, and like you said, there's so much things going on. I've been doing seminars since I retired. Throughout of COVID's the only thing that stopped all the seminars. I did the seminars. I've been doing all these little adventures like walk across Japan, the pilgrimage. While we're doing this podcast, I have a bracelet business. I have a shop in
Mhm.
Hawaii now. And now, lo and behold, because of COVID, I'm starting to train fighters again, Tsuyoshi, even Sarah. So, there's so much going on. And just through the luck of my whole life is always a lucky life. But the strike of I got struck with luck that all of a sudden these kois that I bought at the home center spawned and gave me babies, and I raised them and got hooked on koi. So now that's another thing I'm super interested and having fun with. So there's
Yeah.
so much, man. I mean, really, there's so much. So I think that's a big part of staying sane, I guess.
Mm. I mean, do you have any advice for guys? Sorry, do you have any advice for guys that are on that verge of coming into retirement? Thinking hanging it up professionally. Obviously, a lot of guys go into coaching. You see a lot of guys doing a bit of punditing. For the UFC and other MMA promotions. What's your advice to sort of fighters coming into the sort of twilight of their career?
Yeah, I would advise them to try and find something that they're passionate about. Of course, if they're passionate about fighting, of course the coaching is something, but something other than that.
Mm.
And the biggest thing I could do is the advice I would give fighters, period, is one, fighting is not everything. For me, when I was fighting was everything. I was willing to die for it. I was willing to die in the ring. I was willing to do anything to do my best in the fight. But it's not everything. There is life after fighting. That's one thing I would want to emphasize on the fighters. And the second thing I would want to emphasize on the fighters is when you're at the level of the UFC level and you're getting that good, there's so much involved in it. There's discipline. There's you have to have a good diet. You have to keep a schedule. There's a responsibility, discipline, integrity. There's so much involved in that. What the fighters, I would tell the young fighters too is make sure that you realize that all these things that you are gaining while training and preparing to be a professional fighter is all things that you can address and carry on to your life after fighting. And during their career, they should be trying to practice those things as they're being an active fighter. The discipline that I don't want to train. I don't want to do that anymore. It's like, even I don't want to go to work. You go to work. Even something as simple as you look at the sink and there's a whole ton of dishes there, and it's like, I don't want to do that. But someone's got to do it. You got to do it sometime. You actually have time now. Do it. If you have discipline to train every day, you have discipline to stop the junk foods before the fight. You got discipline to go and do the things that you should be doing. So I think a lot of fighters, for example, someone like John Jones is a perfect example that they have so much discipline in the fight game, and they've developed such a strong spirit in the fight game, and has not carried a single bit to their everyday life.
It's a really good point, because I never thought of that. You guys, as fighters, have to be so disciplined with your training, but then you almost think it would come naturally to sort of carry that over into your like your outside of work life. But it seems there's a few cases where that's not what happens.
Well, if you're not being conscious of it, it's not easy to transfer it and relate it to everyday life, because the fighting is the fighting. Everyday life is two separate things, actually, and you need to really think of applying it to the everyday life. I mean, I still don't think I do it perfectly either. There's a lot of stuff that in my fight career I could do, but in the everyday life I'm drops the ball sometimes. But the important thing, I think, is I'm aware of it. I'm aware of the things that I could do when I was fighting. If I transfer it into my everyday life today, it'll make me a better person, and I'll live a better life.
So obviously nowadays we kind of have mentioned that you're training Tsuyoshi. Tsuyoshi's got a big fight coming up next weekend. How's things going with the preparation for his fight against Saint?
It's super good. It's besides the fact that they've been changing the dates on us, they're changing the opponents on us. We just got the message about Saint like last week, so until then we didn't know who we were fighting. So other than that, Tsuyoshi had a great training camp out in San Diego with the arena people in the arena, Barrett Yoshida's team, and he also had had a couple weeks there. And then he went over to Las Vegas, with Extreme Couture, with the guys out there, and he got awesome training out there too. So his confidence level was high. He was grappling with guys like Tim Johnson from Bellator, from grappling with Francis Ngannou. He mixed with all those guys there. So his confidence level is really high. He's in good shape because of they train really hard out there. So he's on a really good high right now. He's moving. We noticed that he moves a lot better. So yeah, and the Saint is a striker, and we're not thinking of a game where he's going to just try and shoot for takedowns. We're gonna test his whole game. So it's going to be interesting. He's I think probably the best he's ever been so far. He's got a lot more to improve, but up until now, I think he's a lot better than he's ever been. So it's going to be really interesting to see, because Saint seems like he's a pretty aggressive guy. He'll take it to the guy, and he's not the type of guy that will just grab and hold or run away. He'll engage. So it should be a real interesting fight to see how Tsuyoshi has adjusted to his loss, his first defeat, and also how much he's actually gained from and learned from the training abroad with some of the best people in the world in San Diego and Las Vegas.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to see it, just because looking back at Saints fights, he looks like a pretty good prospect as well. So they've kind of, Tsuyoshi's coming straight off the loss and going straight into what looks like could be quite a wild fight. So it's from a fan's point of view, I think it's going to be a really exciting fight.
Yeah, I think so too. Looking forward to it.
Cool. So before we sort of wrap this up, I want to give a quick plug out for the t-shirts, because they're awesome.
Hey, nice t-shirt you got. Who's that guy?
Yeah, they're available at Scramble, so everyone check them out, because they've got a whole sort of Legends design, which is really nice. But any parting words before we wrap up this episode?
Um, yeah, on the whole topic about the fighters, there's a lot of fighters that's going through hard times now. Um, I mean, you don't want to. I don't want to name names, but there's a lot of fighters having a hard time, and it's just, you know, I don't know what it is and what's happening, but I think a big part that would be nice is if fighters would reach out to each other,
Mm.
because we've been through so much and the same type of stuff that I feel that if we reached out, there's a lot of guys that's doing better in this certain area. There's a lot of guys not doing so good in that certain area. And like I'll say the name. Chuck's a good friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know what he's going through right now, but I mean, I'm really hesitant on shooting him a message. I'm going to probably shoot him a message, but I'm going to let things simmer. But I think fighters should reach out to each other,
Mm-hmm.
especially the ones that are friends. I mean, it's hard. It's hard for me to say why, some of these fighters are having a lot of hard times right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel bad for it because I'm in a good pace right now. I'm super happy with who I am and what I'm doing. So it's I wish maybe that's a good idea for them to reach out.
Yeah, definitely. I
Always
think
reach out.
everyone sort of goes through ups and downs in their lives, right? And obviously no one knows the complete full story about what's happening there in that particular situation. But as you say, all you
Mhm.
can really do is sort of show some support and hope if things sort of work themselves out a little bit. And as you say, sometimes just having a friend reach out who's in a positive place can actually kind of help you feel more positive yourself in your scenario. So
Yeah. I agree.
cool. Well, on that somber note, we will be back at some point
Oh, I do
discussing.
have one more thing.
Go for it.
Advice to fighters,
Mm,
especially fighters that like you said at the maybe the twilight, or maybe not even the twilight of the career, even fighters that just are fighting today.
mhm,
My advice to them is give everything you got in the career.
mhm,
Train hard, train as hard as you can. And when you fight as hard as you can. I believe that the harder you train and the more you push, it only will determine the amount you can relax after you're done. If you give 100%, you can 100% relax. I think a lot of fighters might have not pushed as hard as they could, and that's why when their twilight is over and they want to make a comeback, they want to do this again, they want to do that again. I still want to fight. I think I still can do it. I trained as hard as I could. I think I gave everything I got in the gym and in the fights, and I'm I'm over it. I really I understand that I've done what I could do, and I'm done. And I think that's a big part of a lot of these fighters not being able to put down the gloves, is because they still want to do more. Just give everything
mhm.
you got now, and then get it all out of your system, and then hopefully it'll be like me where I'm done. I'm happy. I gave everything I got, and I know what I could do, and I'm done. And when that door closes, you don't peek back in because you fully shut the door if you could give everything you got. I don't know. I'm still, life after fighting is funny. How we this is about, it's about life after fighting, but I still feel like I'm a part of it. I'm never ever gonna leave the fight scene until the day I die, whether it be training fighters, doing seminars, or being a huge fan and just supporting the sport. So life after fighting, I'm still in that life.
Yeah. All right. Thanks,
Yep.
everybody. And we'll speak to you guys again soon.